My feet have crossed the ever-crowded Nakonde border of Tanzania. I have shook hands with the poor, yet wise people of Kibera. I have shared meals with the Nubian elders under the shimmering African sky. The cooling showers of Mosi Uwatunya, otherwise known as the Victoria Falls, have run down my back. I have seen beauty beyond description in Maputo. My eyes have peeped through the airplane window just to see the icy tip of Mount Kilimanjaro. They too have witnessed the Indian and the Atlantic Ocean do a forbidden kiss by the Cape Point. From Cape to Cairo, I've fallen in love with this beautiful land. I've ridden a camel over the hot Egyptian desert, just to breathtakingly gaze at the majestic man-made mountains of Giza. I have sat at the great Mapungubwe Hill and wondered, what if rocks could speak? What ancient stories could they tell us? I have witnessed the African yellow sunset through God's window in Mpumalanga. And I have heard echoes from my ancestors at Isandlwana, gently whispering, Africa is beautiful. So now, wouldn't you want to experience the same? Ladies and gentlemen, let's travel Africa. This is a short poem that I've written about my travel experiences. Well, I'm not a poet, I'm a traveler. I've been traveling the African continent since the year 2006, and I've never looked back ever since. The reason why I started traveling, at first it was to fulfill a curiosity. It was to learn more about what was beyond our South African borders. But ever since then, I've just fallen in love with travel and the beautiful continent. Now, how did I get here? You may be asking yourself, well, I wasn't born a traveler. In fact, the first time I stepped out of my home province, KwaZulu-Natal, was when I went for my tertiary education in Pretoria. And there, mingling with people from different cultures and backgrounds, I fell in love with diversity and I became more curious. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only a page. Those are the famous words of St. Augustine which have propelled and inspired me to travel the African continent because I believe it forms a huge chunk of the book. Now, we all are familiar with this image here, which is it's the world map. But how many of you are familiar with the fact that Africa's landmass is larger than that of the United States of America, China, Japan, India, and all of Europe combined? In fact, you can almost fit the entire United Kingdom in Madagascar alone. So if we take this and St. Augustine's quote into consideration, then maybe we can safely rephrase and say, the world is a book, and those who do not travel Africa read only a page. But wait a minute. When a person says to you, let's travel, or when someone says to you or mentions the word travel, how many of you link it to Africa? How many of you think of Africa? The truth is not many. Most people, when they hear the word travel, they immediately think of Paris, America, London, and seldom Africa. I have asked myself, why is that? What has shaped our thoughts towards this? Well, I have come up with a way for Africa to at least explain and perhaps vindicate herself by using her acronym. The first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what do we know about Africa? Well, for the longest time, Africa has been portrayed as a poverty-stricken continent. A dark continent, it has been called. Much has been written about Africa, and indeed, much has been said about Africa, but the perception that Africa is backward, it remains. But did you know that the first university in the world was built in Africa? The University of Sankore in Mali. So how can Africa be dark and be backward? So with this being said, I've looked for reasons as to why people do not travel the African continent. I've asked myself, is it maybe ignorance, fear, concerns for safety? Other people have told me that it's expensive to travel the African continent. But I remember when I first curated my own travels, I was working as an intern. Myself and a friend of mine, we booked ourselves a bus to Mozambique. Although we made some mistakes, like when we stepped out of South Africa, on our way back, we actually realized that we hadn't gotten a stamp into Mozambique, so we were almost arrested at the border because there was no proof that we had been in the country legally. Now, did that experience stop us from traveling further into Africa? No. And did we, in a way, learn something from that? Yes, we did. Which now takes me to the importance of traveling Africa, and one of the main ones is that you find inspiration across borders. Like, for instance, when I met this gentleman by the name of Anyitike, he taught me the art of silk screen printing, and in a way, he inspired me to establish Azania Zulu clothing brand. But with traveling Africa, there are challenges that we face, and one of them is the bad transportation infrastructure. But that didn't stop me from curating a trip to Tanzania. It took us 4 days to get there, but in a way, we learned so much from that experience. And with this being said, we need to be reminded also of the achievements that we can accomplish when we travel the African continent. And one of them is creating cross-border relationships and friendships, and also intra-trade, and thus boosting the economy. Also, the main ones is, as we get to know each other as friends, we can, in a way, counter xenophobia. Like when I met Mtabisi Piri, a curator at the National Art Gallery of KwaBulawayo, and he, upon learning that I was a photographer, he invited me to exhibitions and trade shows years later after our meeting. So with this being said, I have actually asked myself, what is travel? And according to the dictionary, travel is to move from one place to the next. Some people think that travel is all about posing in front of statues or hugging buildings. For me, travel is about what happens in between those moments. For me, travel is more than just parachuting myself from one place to the next. Travel for me is connection. Like when I met the Nubian elders in Aswan, Ali Baba, our tour guide, he later translated to me that they said that I am Nubian, I am one of them. Travel is interaction. Like when I interacted with the kids from Kibera, the largest slum in Africa. Travel is learning. Like when I learned to sail a felucca by the Nile River. Travel is finding friendship. Like when I became friends with Nicole and Cedric during my North African trip. Travel is facing your fears. And travel is self-interrogation. Travel also is the awakening of the senses. I believe the best experiences are not the ones that you read through from blogs and also from the best travel movie. The best experiences is when you are out there. Travel for me is raw and unrehearsed. The best souvenirs we collect are not the pictures or the things that we buy from curio shops. I believe it's the smiles and the kind words from strangers. Travel for me is a way of enriching one's life. I believe one does not travel because they are rich, but one is rich because they travel. So, what traveling Africa has taught me is that Africa is a land of extravagant beauty. It is a land of a people so rich in history and heritage. People who thrive on the spirit of Ubuntu, the very essence of humanity. What traveling Africa has taught me is the importance of sharing my story from a learned experience rather than spreading a rumor. So the idea for me is to see more young people travel the African continent. In a way, we achieve a goal of having a people who are conscious about who they are and who Africa is. Ladies and gentlemen, let's travel Africa so that in a way, as we travel and discover our world, we will discover ourselves.